The way ethnic studies is sold and what it really is are very different things.
Very encouraged today to hear multiple examples during student testimony referring to the value of critical thinking and the process of developing critical thinking skills. It's very important. It's what we send kids to school to learn fundamentally so that they can go out into the world and successfully negotiate it. Part of critical thinking is discerning what something is and what something isn't. There is a certain fallacy known as the Motte-Bailey, and basically what it is when you take something, you're trying to defend something that is in some way highly controversial, and in order to do so, you try to reframe it into something that's more palatable. So what we've seen here, what we've heard here in committee today is that what we're talking about is the ability for students to tell stories, the ability to learn about each other, the ability to learn about history, about people and places and times and dates. That's not what ethnic studies is about. It's been referred to by other names today. Someone called it, I believe, a student, critical ethnic studies.
Critical ethnic studies is important to me because it helped me understand my own identity as a Latin American, first-generation Argentine student. Yeah, I got to learn and explore how minority groups, such as Latinos, fit into a larger story of race, power, and privilege in society.
It's been referred to as critical race theory by some opponents, and I think that's an accurate identification of what we're talking about.
Denying students access to ethnic studies is a major step in the wrong direction.
Some of the statements, some of the things that we heard from students today, we heard phrases like cause and effect power dynamics, social justice, institutional racism.
I want them to learn about diversity, equity, social justice, and the difference between race and ethnicity. I care because I want my younger siblings and future children to learn the uncensored version of history, one that doesn't omit the phrase institutional racism.
These are ideological political terms. One student testifier said that he was familiar with the philosophy and pedagogy behind it.
As someone who has been studying social studies education for a couple of years now, I'm not only familiar with the curriculum, but the philosophy and the pedagogy behind it.
So we're teaching a philosophy to our students. What is that philosophy? Well, as one student said, he said, as a white male, I may not be able to understand the experience of others.
Through ethnic studies, I came to understand that as a white man living in the United States, I may not be able to relate or even understand what others have experienced.
That is a summary of a concept known as ethnic Gnosticism. It's the idea that you can only understand the experience of a person if you share their ethnicity. It's not possible for somebody who's not of that ethnicity to understand the experience of another person. That is a divisive, ideological, philosophical concept. We heard another student say, and I think this was key, that what ethnic studies does, as being implemented in the state of Minnesota, is it initiates anti-racism.
It initiates anti-racism inside and outside the classroom that is essential for all students.
Well, that sounds nice, but what are we talking about? What's the definition of anti-racism? Well, there was a definition in an early version of the bill that gave us these ethnic studies mandates. From that bill, anti-racist means actively working to eliminate racism in all its forms so that power and resources are redistributed and shared equitably among racial groups. That is a political objective. That is an ideological objective. I believe it was Representative Sincer herself who said that we've seen examples today of resistance and activism.
These empowered students are the product of an ethnic studies class. Examples of resistance, examples of activism.
That's the end product of ethnic studies. We're teaching our students to be resistant activists rather than productive citizens. I think that's a mistake, that's an error. We're teaching them to dismantle our systems, to question systems of inequality, question our systems and dismantle them.
This knowledge empowered my peers and I to think critically about the world around me and challenged me to question systems of inequality.
This example here that was mentioned by Catherine Kirsten, that in St. Paul schools, The ethnic studies courses do not cultivate mutual understanding, but push students to form tribalized identities and stoke defiance of authority. I think that analysis was affirmed by what we heard today in committee. There's nothing in this bill that's going to prohibit students from telling their stories, from learning about each other, from learning about history, people, places, things, times, dates, and even having conversations. You want to talk about power dynamics? You want to have a debate? Fantastic. Exercise those critical thinking skills. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to practice a radical political ideology in Minnesota classrooms.